Welcome to Learners Academy. This is Mona Bhatia, and today I'm going to take the fourth chapter of MMR, and there will be introduction based on this topic: discovery of research problem, errors in research problem, identifying dependent and independent variables, along with developing hypothesis. Now, till now we have dealt with steps in research processes and also in-depth knowledge of qualitative and quantitative research. Now, in this chapter, we'll talk about research problem. Defining a research problem is the foundation or basic thing of any research method or experimental design, right? It is the first and foremost step or first statement made in any research paper. Please remember, and it should also include a quick synopsis of how the hypothesis would be arrived at. Then exact definition of the variables and types of scientific measurements are also given, which are used in the process. This will lead to the proposal of a viable hypothesis. Alright, now we'll discuss the chapter in detail. Discovery of research problem. Now this is crucial. It is really difficult to find a good research problem, though it may look easy, but there are so many things that we want to know. So there are n numbers of research problem under the sky, but what you select, once you select one thing and approach these questions closely, they appear too vast and too much of complexities involved in them, and then so they need to be broken down further. And when you do that, you suddenly find yourself with a choice of thousands of small problems. So now you have to choose the one which is the most important and you have interest in doing it, right? But then you will observe that many of them have already been studied or taken up by previous researchers. So someone has already discovered the answer you are still looking for. What will you do? Will you stop? No, you'll still continue. I mean, this is really tough to find out all these uh, things, whether the problem has already been studied or is anybody still doing research on it. We can't see the big picture by sitting in our comfort zone in our houses, but our research problem, a small piece of a jigsaw puzzle. Whichever you choose, it will be your baby. You will have to really nurture it well. So uh, we have to tell the fellow researcher that this is what we came, what we concluded. You need to spread the word so that others can also guide you regarding your research question. Actually, the ideal research problem is something that can be solved but has not been yet. So when you are starting, keep certain points in your mind, like, is my research going to educate me? Is it going to lead to even better project or be enjoyable at the same time, be worth it even after years from now? Get academic research community interested in you, or prove to industrialists or environmentalists or leaders that you have something which is crucial for them, or make you a famous grad student. Alright, so research program is an organized and systematic inquiry and study, right? It is an intellectual process. So selection of research problem is the foremost and basic step. As I told you before also, the research problem must be carefully selected. Researchers should take help from a guide. In order to identify a research problem, we can go through various steps. Various steps to identify a research problem. The first is selection of the discipline. Second is demarcating the broad area or a particular aspect of the selected subject. Third is identifying two or more specific topics in the selected research problem. Now we'll deal with the first one. The discipline or subject in which the research has to be done should be selected. It could be anything. economics, science, management, psychology, medicine, you just name it. Second point, when we say demarcating the broad area or a particular aspect of the selected subject, what do we mean by this? Basically, here the researcher must select a particular aspect of the subject which he has selected. For example, in research, in science, he can select human physiology, human psychology, genetic behavior, or whatever. Third point, when we said identifying two or more specific topics in the selected research problem, I mean, here it actually leads to the identification of the problem or research question. This is the final step. Here, researcher selects the specific topics on which to focus. There are certain criteria on the basis of which researcher selects the research problem. These criteria could be either internal or external. Internal means his interest, his competence, available resources with respect to his time, with respect to his finances. And external criteria can include like research ability of the problem, its importance and urgency, novelty of the problem, feasibility, facilities, usefulness, social relevance, right? So all these will come in the external criteria. I'll repeat one more time. Internal will be the moods of the researcher, his interest, his competence, his finances, how he will be able to deal with them, his time available for him, and external will have researchability of the problem, its importance and urgency, novelty of the problem, feasibility, facilities, usefulness, and social relevance, right? Please remember. So once the research problem has been selected, it needs to be defined and formulated, right? Now, formulation means translating and transforming the selected problem into a scientifically researchable question, right? Into a scientifically researchable question. There are three aspects in formulation of research problem. The first one is the originating question, the second one is rationale of the question, and the third one is specifying the question. I'll give you details of each. The originating question, this refers to what one wants to know exactly. It may be discovering new facts or finding out the validity of certain empirical studies. Alright, now rationale of the question, this is basically to understand why a certain question or a research problem is chosen or taken. Specifying the question means the main original question is broken up into several specific questions. Now this is done, why? So as to identify all the areas wherever data is required. Breaking is very important here, okay? So the main question, original question, is broken up into several specific questions. All right. So this is to facilitate the data collection. The actual process of formulation of the research problem may involve two steps. The first one is developing a title and the second one is building a conceptual model. Now, what is developing a title? The title should reflect the real intention of the researcher and on which aspect the focus of the study will be. It should give you a direct hint. Alright, now building a conceptual model means on the basis of theoretical knowledge of the problem, some specific concepts are used. The interrelation between the different concepts needs to be identified and structured into a framework. Errors in research process, and there can be innumerable errors that can occur in a research process, and we can enlist few of them like population specification, sampling, selection errors, non-responsiveness, measurement errors, researcher's bias, failure to recognize that reported and actual behavior differ, then ignoring related factors, overgeneralization of results, failure to recognize invalid data, and confusion over correlation and causation. So I'm going to explain each of these in details. Population specification. Now this type of error occurs when researcher selects an inappropriate population to collect data. For example, if an electronic company conducts a survey and it targets housewife, but mostly electronic items, as you know, are generally bought by male counterparts, so it will be targeting the wrong audience and may yield the wrong results, and you may not get the relevant and sufficient data, though it can be sometimes all right that the female are the deciding a member of the family on the electronic gadgets also, but most of the time it is seen that it is the male counterparts. So the researcher must target mainly husbands, but sometimes the female also participates in the decision making while buying the product. So it would be best, to ask the couple who takes takes the decision while buying such items. Even for items like grocery, it would be a good idea, to ask a housewife, because sometimes male member does grocery shopping. Not always, like it is the housewife who is doing grocery shopping. So contrary to the common belief that grocery purchases are mainly done by housewife, it can be other way around also. Okay, so next point that I would like to talk in detail is the sampling error. So this type of error occurs when probability sampling method is used to select a sample, but the resulting sample is not representative of the population concerned. So this type of errors are unavoidable somehow. For example, now we are having vaccination programs going on in our country, and we sometimes pharmaceutical companies are conducting a survey to measure their concerns, fears, enthusiasms, etc. But then upon analysis, it was found that survey was conducted mostly in the suburbs, or only in one part of the town was considered. Villages were ignored. So it will be it will prevent data accuracy. Even it will prevent accurate sampling also. All right. Now, what do you mean by non-responsive error? Non-responsive error means um, sometimes the gathered sample differ from the original selected sample, and it happens during the telephonic surveys. During the initial survey, like what, but they may not be available at home or moved from that places, or sometimes working couples are not available to answer. So more surveys can anticipate errors because the respondents cannot be contacted at that moment. So now, because of the internet, these types of errors are avoidable, can be avoided, as we have now emails, and emails can be accessed anywhere also now because of internet data and mobile data. So it takes care of that not at home type of responses. All right, so before that I would like to talk about selection. It is the sampling error for a sample selected by non-probability method. Okay, then we come talk about measurement errors. Okay, now this is very common. This type of error is generated during measurement process, and there is sometime difference between the information gathered and the information wanted by the researcher. All right, now what is a researcher bias? Now biasness towards or against always alters the result, isn't it? And this can happen because of many reasons, like how the question was posed, how the researcher took he took the note in a different way because he had his own thoughts about the topic. Now how the researcher drew conclusion from the collected data, that is also one point to be noted. Now to eliminate this type of bias, researcher bias, one must write the questions and one must pay attention to whether they would get biased result if asked to the respondents. So quality of questions should be good. Researchers should take objective note while observing and while interpreting the data to draw any conclusion. Alright, next is failure to recognize that reported and actual behavior differ. So we must acknowledge that reported behavior and actual behavior are not always the same. Right? For example, if you ask many, you know, how many hours, the students study every day, they are likely to report either more hours just to impress, or sometimes some students they don't want to disclose how much they are studying, so they may give you a wrong data, so they will report less number of hours they study during the day. All right, so next point is ignoring related factors. For example, it is basically not possible to include each and every factor while working on a survey related to your primary research. All right, but still researcher must make every effort to incorporate them into the analysis of their data. Researcher has to do his work no matter what. Next is over generalization of results. Now this is most common error in the research problem, and always we tend to generalize about a group based on surveys. We should never do that. All right, now next is failure to recognize the invalid data. Now when you think that each participant takes your study seriously, do you think he does? You have to be, you are wrong. You have to understand that not all of them take your study, your question seriously. Now, there are always some participants who intentionally provide inaccurate answers, and this type of data from such participant also alters or skew the entire data. But sometimes you are able to judge whether the person is seriously answering or just, throwing your wrong answers. So you should be sharp. You should be sharp to recognize when you come across such type of participants. Now you can omit this type of data immediately in case you know that this is wrong. Now let's talk about what is the confusion over correlation and causation. Now one most common research problem is the temptation to take a correlation between two things and imply a causation. Actually, relationship between two things does not always mean one causes the other. Okay, it can mean that the two are related by a third outside variable. We are going to deal with variables in the coming lectures very soon. So for example, if participant reports getting low marks in exam, and amount of studies he has done during that exam, so these are two variables. This does not always imply that causation. Okay, instead there could be a third factor, such as high stress level during that day when he appeared for the exam, that could have caused less marks, or his illness that could have led to having less marks. So this is all about the errors in research process. Next topic is identifying dependent and independent variables. Now before I start, let's understand what is a variable. A variable is an object or an event, idea, feeling, or time period, or any other type of category we want to measure. Okay, the empirical means basically based on observation. The counterpart of a concept is called a variable, and they are important as they link the empirical with the theoretical. All right, now variable are those phenomena or events which are measured or manipulated in a research. Researchers, they try to test many associated variables in order to develop an underlying meaning or relationship between them. Okay, after analyzing only important and relevant variables, they are kept and the rest of them are discarded. All right. Now, important variables are called marker variables. They are called marker variables, and variables are divided on the basis of their relationship with one another. All right. Now, independent variables, they are called are those which cause or are responsible for bringing about change in the phenomena or a situation. They are systematically varied by researcher. It is a variable that stands alone, okay, and is not changed by other variable you are trying to measure. For example, your age is independent variable. Other factors such as what you eat, which school you go to, how you go about, which sports you play will not change your age. But we'll try to look for some kind of relationship between variables, whether independent variable causes some changes in the dependent variable, right? So dependent variable, on the other hand, they are the outcomes of changes brought about by the introduction of the independent variables. So these are observed and their values depend on the influence of the independent variables. Dependent variable depends on other factors. So dependent variables are what researcher wants to explain. For example, smoking and cancer. Smoking is independent variable and cancer is a dependent variable because smoking causes cancer. All right. Cancer depends on smoking. Okay. So, difference between types of variable is based on the purpose of study. Whatever is independent variable in one study can be a dependent variable in another study. Like for example, smoking is independent variable, but it may depend upon stress. It may also depend upon the company, anxiety or exposure, etc. Now it becomes a dependent variable. All right. So also in research study, relationship of more than one independent variable to one dependent variable can be studied or examined. In most of the cases, many dependent variables are measured in the same research, and these are called multivariate analysis. Okay, and I'm going to give you a link of a YouTube video in the description box. So for those who are, whose concepts are not clear for dependent and independent variables, I would like you to go through that video. I'll give you one more example of a dependent variable. For example, scores in a test could be dependent variable as it depends on various factors, such as how much you studied, how peacefully you slept at night before exam, or what was it a disturbed sleep, whether you had enough food or were you starved, whether you ate properly or not, what you eat or what you drink before the exam. So usually when you are looking for a relationship between two things, you are trying to find out what makes the dependent variable change the way it does. Okay. Now please remember, the independent variable causes a change in dependent variables, and it is not possible that dependent variables could cause a change in independent variables. Okay, so like time spent on studying causes a change in the test score, but not vice versa. So time spent on studies is independent variable and the test score is a dependent variable, right? So independent variable can be manipulated by the researcher. Dependent variable is the response to that manipulation. Okay. Now independent variable is the presumed cause and dependent variable is the presumed effect. So independent variable is antecedent and dependent variable is a consequent. Independent variable is manipulated by the researcher. Dependent variable is not manipulated. Instead it is observed. Dependent variable can be influenced by controlled variables. Okay. Now in our next lecture, in the next slide, we shall be talking about 6 common variable types. For example, just now I said dependent variable can be influenced by controlled variables. So now I'll be discussing about 6 common variable types. 6 common variables are dependent variables, independent variables, intervening variables, moderator variables, control variables, and extraneous variable. So I'm going to explain each of these one by one. What is a dependent variable? Dependent variable shows the effect of manipulating or introducing independent variable. For example, if independent variable is the amount of water given, then dependent variable might be the growth of plant. In other words, the variation in the dependent variable depends on the variation in the independent variable. Now, what is independent variable? Are those that researcher has full control on. Okay. Now, this control may be in the form of manipulating the existing variable or introducing a new variable. For example, the amount of water given, less, more, excess, or no water. So whatever the case may be, the researcher expects that the independent variable will have some effect on the dependent variable. Now the second type of variable is independent variable. We have talked about dependent and independent. Third is intervening variable. Now they are not real things, they are hypothetical internal states that are used to refer to the abstract process that are directly observable but that link the independent and the dependent variable. For example, the causal relationship between X and Y might be explained by intervening variable T. T can be say education, which explain that X is linked to Y, hence X is indirect cause of Y through T. T is education. T predicts Y but is simultaneously predicted by X. So explain relationship between intervening variables. They help us, to explain relationship between observed variables such as independent variable and dependent variable. Now intervening variables are the interpretation of the observed fact, not the fact themselves. Now, intervening variables are used to explain causal links between other variables. Extraneous variables are any variable which you are not intentionally studying in your experiment or test. Okay. Now, moderator variables. What are those? Moderator variables, they affect the relationship between the independent variable and the dependent variable by modifying the effect of the intervening variable. For example, extremely sunny days or rainy days during watering may affect the state of plant, right? And affect the relationship between the dependent and the independent variable. Likewise, now I'll talk about control variable. Watering the plant and growth are two different things. It is not possible to consider every variable in a single study. Therefore, variables that are not measured in a particular study must be held constant. You have to control those variables. You have to neutralize certain things. That means you have to keep the balance or eliminate that so that they do not have any biasing effect on the other variable. So this is called controlling the variable. So variables that have been controlled in this manner are called controlled variables. Like in case of plants, other factors are controlled. They are kept in check. For example, pest, fertilizer, lights, quality of seeds, they will be controlled. You will not be changing them because it will be otherwise very difficult to understand which variable caused what. Okay, so there will be a set of variables which will be in constant check, which will be always in a controlled manner so as to link other two variables with each other. Now, what is extraneous variable? Extraneous variables are those variables in the research environment which may have an effect of dependent variable, but they are not controlled. Extraneous variables are very dangerous because as they can affect the study's validity, and you don't know when they are going to change the come into picture, and it makes impossible to know whether the effect were caused by the independent variables or moderate variables or extraneous variable. So if they cannot be controlled, they must be taken into consideration, right, when interpreting the result. Now, if we are studying whether red light affect plant growth, so we'll be having independent variable that will be the color of the light. One is yellow light and the other one is red light. Now, dependent variable will be the plant height, because whether red light is going to affect the growth or the yellow light, that we have to study. So in this case, there will be other variable which will be kept in control. The water will be same. The water that will be given to both the plants will be same. They will be exposed to the same day and night temperature. The soil of the plants will be same. The temperature to which they are exposed should also be same. Okay, so these will be the controlled variable. Otherwise, these also can affect the dependent variable. If the soil in this case of yellow light is more richer, the plant will have more growth. Then you will not be able to study whether it was due to yellow light or due to red light. So you, with this picture, it will be very clear which are the control variable and how to study the relationship between the independent and the dependent variable. For your reference, I am going to put some YouTube links in my description box for the better understanding of the variables. Okay. Developing hypothesis. Now, before we get into the complexity of developing hypothesis, let us first fully understand what is hypothesis, right? There are many ways in which you can define hypothesis. Hypothesis is something which needs to be tested for research, right? If it is developed correctly, it will lead to good collection of data by correct method. And a good hypothesis should have or will have three important components. Okay, the first one is assumption. Now, assumption means possible explanation for the problem, and for this, the researcher must have some background knowledge of the subject. Second important component is condition. Condition tells us how the researcher will conduct the research and how the data will be collected. Third is the prediction, and it is a part of hypothesis, as researcher must predict or must tell what he thinks will happen. Okay, so possible outcome of the hypothesis. So these are three important components of a good hypothesis: assumption, condition, and prediction. Some definitions of hypothesis, like a hypothesis are single tentative guesses, good hunches assumed in devising theory or planning experiment intended to be given a direct experimental test whenever possible. This definition was given by Eric Rogers, and according to MacLeod-Clark, a hypothesis is a statement or explanation that is suggested by either knowledge or observation but has not yet been proved or disproved. This was given by MacLeod-Clark. So after a research problem has been identified, researcher needs to state the problem in the form of a hypothesis. It is a formal statement or a proposition which can be put to test to determine its validity. Now, hypothesis can be classified into, based on function, into two ways. One is descriptive hypothesis, second is relational hypothesis. Now, what is a descriptive hypothesis? They describe characteristics, for example, size, forms, etc. Like these are preposition that are typically state the existence or the size or form or distribution of some variable. Example, the current unemployment rate in India is 6%. So this is called descriptive. Here researcher often use a research question rather than a descriptive hypothesis, like what is the current employment rate in India. Now what is a relational hypothesis? They describe relationship between two variables. Okay, relationship between two variable is given by relational hypothesis. Okay, now another approach to classify the hypothesis is working hypothesis, null hypothesis, and statistical hypothesis. What is a working hypothesis? They are made while planning the study of a problem. They may not be specific, and they are subject to modification as the research progresses, because they are made while planning the study of a problem. All right. Now, what is a null hypothesis? In a working hypothesis, sometimes there are certain statements denying what is explicitly indicated in working hypothesis. They state that no difference exists between the parameter and the statistic it is being compared to. So in this picture, you can clearly understand the difference between a working hypothesis and a null hypothesis. So in this case, the cat shows no preference for food based on shape, whether it is in the shape of fish or whether it is a triangular shape. Then the second hypothesis, plant growth is not affected by the light color. So the null hypothesis assumes that there is no relationship between two variables and that controlling one variable has no effect on the other. For example, age has no effect on the musical ability. Okay, so then that hypothesis stands null. Okay, now what is a statistical hypothesis? They are derived from a sample. They are quantitative in nature because they are from numbers, samples, and can be numerically measured. Now here we take a sample of data and test a claim. It is a statement. It is basically a statement about the parameters of one or more population. For conducting a successful research, it is essential to carefully construct a hypothesis. It's always important to construct the best hypothesis. It is the hypothesis which brings clarity to research and makes it specific. Now hypotheses arise from hunches, gut feeling, which are to be tested. Now hypotheses are speculative statement subject to verification by the research study. Hypothesis should be simple, specific, and conceptually clear. Characteristics of a good hypothesis. Good hypothesis should be conceptually clear. It should be specific. It should be testable. It should be related to available techniques to make it researchable. Then it should be logically consistent. It should be objective in nature. It should be very, very simple. And you don't have to prove your hypothesis to be correct. Okay, it's a starting point. All right, a statement that you hope to prove true after more research and investigation, and after that you may find your hypothesis needs modification as it is not holding correct. So it need not to be true or correct. Good hypothesis will help you focus on your investigation. As you do research and progress in your investigation, you'll notice that more and more information will emerge. But it is your hypothesis that will not let you stray, go haywire, and lose your focus in your investigation. Okay, now there are certain conditions of hypothesis. Any acceptable hypothesis should fulfill two conditions. The number one condition is it must explain what it claims to explain, and the second is it must be capable of being verified or tested. Now while developing a hypothesis, you must discuss it with experts or colleagues, like everything regarding its origin, objective, data, other clues, etc. So researcher can also do personal investigations like interviews to gain better insight into the problem. All right. Now, let us discuss what are the steps involved in developing an effective hypothesis. First of all, you need to review your information so far and decide what information is important and how it is going to help you develop your hypothesis. So first step is called the preliminary research. Now the second step is writing your hypothesis. Second step will be writing your hypothesis. Your hypothesis is a statement which you want to prove through your investigation or research. It should be written in a very concise statement. Okay, it should also reflect what is your position. You can also take contrary position also, and you should be really focusing on how it is important to the society as a whole. It should be your statement, your hypothesis should be verifiable. That means it can be tested. If it is put to a test, it can be tested. Now the third step is to test the hypothesis against all the criterias, like whether it has a contrary argument too. Even then it should be able to put to test. It should be arguable. Okay, it should be significant to social activists. It can be tested, and it should require research whether or not it is true. Okay, now before you make a hypothesis, you have to clearly recognize the question you are interested in studying. Remember, hypothesis is a statement, not a question. It is not a specific question in your project. It is a testable prediction about what will happen. Remember, hypothesis is written in clear and simple language. Please make it clear. Also, good hypothesis defines variable in easy to measure term and easy to understand terms and what the effect of changes will be. Now make sure your hypothesis is testable. To prove your hypothesis, you need to be able to do an experiment and take measurements or make observation to see how the two things are related. Now it should be that you should be able to repeat your experiment over and over again if it at all it is important to prove your investigation. In case you want to prove your point, you should be able to repeat it. You must think of all the experiments you will need to carry and identify all the variables, include independent variables, dependent variables in the hypothesis statement. Okay, next thing to remember is that while doing your research, you may find many studies similar to the one you are doing, which are being already conducted. Don't get disheartened, as you know, this can actually help you shape your project and hypothesis in a better way. So it can actually help you shape your project and hypothesis. Don't feel that it is already done, so there is no point of doing it again, all over again. Okay. Now we shall study what is a scientific process in research. Now research question focuses on area where knowledge is incomplete, right? We all know this. And hypotheses are tentative explanation that could answer the research question. So scientists use prevailing theory as well as the result from experiment as a guide in developing a hypothesis. This is called a scientific process. Now specific predictions are then developed by deductive reasoning. Okay, these predictions are based on a particular hypothesis and should be tested by experiment. Now finally the experiment are performed to test the specific predictions. Okay, now I'll show you this with the help of a diagram. See, the research question focuses on an area where knowledge is incomplete. Okay, now hypotheses are tentative explanation that could answer the research question. Then specific predictions are deduced by reasoning, by deductive reasoning. Okay, then finally experiments are performed to test the specific prediction, and we get the specific result which are induced in the hypothesis also, and they are the cumulative evidences, and these evidences are again included or induced in the main theory, from where we have found one research question where the knowledge was incomplete. So this makes a full table. Alright, now a problem cannot be scientifically solved unless it is reduced to a hypothesis form. This is very important. Now see another diagram, scientific research process. Here you observe nature. This will give you a very, general ideas. Then you have to pose a question. Do you have to develop a hypothesis? Then plan investigation, assemble data, analyze that data, document conclusion, then present your finding, whatever finding that you found, and pose a new question, and you can induce that information in your knowledge. So this is how it works. Okay, now hypothesis is considered valuable even if it is proven wrong or false. Hypothesis is a prediction of consequences, and it is neither too specific nor too general. Hypotheses are not moral or ethical questions. Please remember, it can be tested, verified, or they can be false also. Okay, so I would like you to see few videos which are given in the description box related to direct and indirect variable and developing hypothesis. They'll really clear your concept, and they are not my videos, good videos which have been produced by some YouTubers, good content.